How you doing, everybody? Welcome back to Before I Forget. This is my video channel inspired by my Instagram channel, 1985 Road Dog. If you're not familiar with that channel, check it out. You'll see a lot of my photos from my time spent in music as a fan and as somebody that worked in the business. This is basically story behind the photos kind of thing, but it's expanded since then, really. Today, I'm going to talk about the importance of, I was thinking about record companies, how without record companies, 90% of all the classic bands, classic albums, you would never have heard of because you needed the record company to make you a star. Without the record company, you couldn't become a star. I don't care how great the band was or musically, stylistically, how influential or great you might have been, you needed that record company to become a star. So, today you really don't have that anymore. Sure, there's record companies or there's entertainment companies, but they're not star-making machines anymore. It's not like the old days. In the old days, you formed a band and you played and you got popular in your hometown and you hoped to make a record at some point. And, once the Beatles came along, everybody wanted to be like the Beatles, really, or the Stones. So you formed bands and you hoped to get the chance to make a record. And then once you made a record, you got to hope that, if you got signed to a real record label like Columbia or Warner Brothers or somebody like that, you hope that they would actually push the record so you could become famous. Record companies did it all. Without the concentrated focus on bands, certain bands, whether it was, Bon Jovi, or, whoever, Aerosmith, Kiss. Sure, the bands worked hard, and sure, they had musical merit, and they had good songs, or they were cool, or whatever. But the record companies greased the wheels. You needed radio, and in order to get radio play, back then, it was payola. You paid guys, you paid stations, you paid station managers, you paid DJs to play your records. Whether you gave them cash or drugs or girls or whatever. That's what you did. It was a machine. The record company held in their hands the ability to make you big or not. Sure, you had to be, you had to have songs and you had to have, talent, but there's many bands that were very talented and had great songs that never made it because they didn't have the push from the record company. And you're talking millions and millions of dollars. So only certain amount, or there's only certain bands that could, warranted that, or, however you got that push, whether it was the talent of the band was undeniable, or you were a pretty good band and you had a big manager and you had a lot of money coming into pushing you from the management end. They would put their own, push behind it on top of the record company, which just kept, of course, it just kept you further in debt. You're paying back all this money constantly as a musician or a band, so you don't really see a lot of cash. You don't see a lot of money until you hit the big 20 million sales kind of thing, like Appetite for Destruction or Slippery When Wet. That kind of success brought you serious money, especially if you were the songwriter. So the record companies had a piece of your publishing, but they made you a star. That without the record companies and the focus of the machine, the focus of that machine made these artists household names. In the MTV days, in the video explosion days, in the early mid 80s, you wanted certain songs or certain acts to get heavy play on MTV. So it was the same thing. They would only, if you're Warner Brothers and you've got, 200 acts on your roster, maybe 20 of them are going to get pushed hard. So, the ones that got pushed hard onto MTV, if they had a decent video and something that was intriguing and something for the VJs to discuss and talk about, you got heavy play. So you needed the record company. Today, there's no record company. So some people find that as a better thing. Well, we don't need to have one record label or one industry, dub us worthy of a push. Now everyone's got a fair shot. It's a level playing field with streaming and, of course, the internet and everything. When that exploded, it just changed everything. Now you can get your music out there to people all over the world. But so is a million other bands and artists and acts and songwriters. So you're just deluged night and day with tons of music, tons of artists, level playing field. None of them are being focused on to be stars. I mean, whatever you call a star today, a rock star, I don't know. It's not truly being a rock star. Just because you punch something on stage or break a glass on stage and are bleeding on stage, that doesn't make you a rock star. That's just mimicking what came before you to try to be edgy and cool. But the age of the rock star is done. And most of that comes from not having the record company. And of course, there were limited outlets back then. You had radio and you had MTV, really. Once the internet exploded, then it was changed everything. So you only had limited outlets back then. So if you were one of the few that got the focus and the push and the money behind you, and you were on every one of these limited outlets, meaning every one of the radio stations in the country and on MTV, then you became a star if you got the push. If you were able to have a single that was popular and a hit single, top 40, a second single, a third single, a second hit album, a third hit album. Very, very rare that happened. But that's what cemented in the public consciousness of familiarity and that person's a star. You see and hear them everywhere. Very few. Like I said, the mega successes of Slippery When Wet, Appetite for Destruction, the 80s, I had mentioned in another video, that really started with Fleetwood Mac, Rumors. Of course, once you hit the 80s and you had those big records, you also had the Michael Jacksons, which was just ridiculous big, 40-something million. So, it was, you only got to that point if you really had the goods and the record company was pushing you and spending millions of dollars on you to make you a household name. Then you became a star, So we don't have that anymore. So that's why there's no stars. That's why there's no rock stars. That's why there's no nothing. It's just, I don't know. I don't even know what to call it. And I'm not putting it down, but a lot of it is not even musical. There's no music involved in any of it, So people have just, modern day musicians, a lot of them have just adopted past behavior, and this is what rock stars did and how they acted, and they just mimic it like, it's Halloween, but it's not real. So I just really, the record company, big, influenced everything. Publicists, who got the cover of a magazine, who got a feature in a magazine, came from the record company. The record company was the power behind all of that. The magazines, the radio, MTV, the press, all record companies. Without that, and without the payola and everything else that went on to make somebody big, you wouldn't have half the stuff. You wouldn't have half the records and half the stars and half the bands we still listen to today. Because without the record company, no one would have noticed them. I always say, the most unbelievable band in the world could be playing right down the road from you, the next Led Zeppelin, whatever, in a bar. Unless somebody pays attention to them, they're not going to get noticed. And there's so much going on, and there's so much traffic out there amongst music and bands and artists. You can't focus on any one person, really. It's too much. Same way movies, why is, Jaws and whatever, Fast Times at Ridgemont High and, The Exorcist, whatever. Why are all these classic movies still so huge, and why were they so popular? Saturday Night Fever, The Godfather. Because there was no home video or anything, no streaming. You went to a movie theater to see the movie. And because there was only a certain amount of outlets to see a movie, They were movie theaters. And if you, again, had a movie pushed by a big Hollywood movie studio, and you had the push and you had the distribution to get that movie into every theater across the country, and it was a good movie, it was a hit, and it was cemented in pop culture. I mean, Jaws and Star Wars and Saturday Night Fever and a lot of those movies in the 70s, you had to go to the theater to see it. People would go multiple times. There'd be lines. Movies would be sold out, in the old days. That was it. I mean, that's the only place to see the film. So, again, same thing. Limited outlets and major focus and hype and press and ads in the newspapers and everything. Jaws. Jaws was in the movie theater for like a year. 3 shows a day, 4 shows a day for a year. Just went. Same with Saturday Night Fever and The Godfather and all those films. So that's why they're cemented in pop culture. And of course, the main reason is because they're great films. So that's really that on this subject. Record companies, man. That's why there's no stars anymore. There's no record company pushing for that person to be a star. Thanks for tuning in. There'll be more to come. 1985 Road Dog is the Instagram. I appreciate you tuning in, and have a good one. Speak to you soon. Ciao.